Hello, world. Welcome to the Speed Strength Show. I'm Tommy.
And I'm Braden. And can you drown in snow?
100% you can.
Why are you so confident?
Well, because what's drowning?
See, I
I
did
know we
Google
often
that.
talk about what's the definition of thing, but I'm prepared with a definition.
You know what the definition.
Well,
You know the definition
not
of
for
drowning.
sure, but I have a definition in my mind of what is drowning.
Okay. Well, I did look it up, and it's just suffocation. So you're right. You can.
Well, that was my first thought, is that it's not drowning in the same way that you're consumed by water and can't consume oxygen. But it's the same at the end of the day that you can't consume oxygen if you were buried in snow. Same way if you were buried in dirt or anything else that would basically trap air.
Yeah, but I guess here's the thing is like if you are suffocated by dirt, you don't call that drowning.
Well, maybe we
Like
should.
it's only drowning if it's water. Well, if you call everything drowning, then there's no use for the word suffocation.
Well, there is. Suffocation is a lack of oxygen. So any point where you would have a lack of oxygen, you would refer to it as suffocation.
But then you just call that drowning. You just call that drowning then.
I think, this is a little bit like, training a means to an end.
Yeah.
Like this is, at the end of the day, it all leads to the same thing. So
yeah. But I guess my thing is that drowning it's the same thing, but it's water specific. And the fact that snow is water in a way makes it questionable, I think. Absolutely you cannot drown in dirt. You can't call that drowning.
Well, you could.
You can suffocate, but it's not drowning is my point.
But suffocating is drowning.
No, it's not.
And drowning is suffocating.
With water, though.
Is it like...
If it's mud, maybe.
I guess I'm just looking at it as that drowning is a lack of oxygen, suffocating is a lack of oxygen. Therefore, drowning is suffocating, and suffocating is drowning.
No, I don't think they're the same. You can say drowning is suffocating, but suffocating is not necessarily drowning. It's like the finger thumb thing or the square rectangle thing.
So does it work like the animal classes and the plant classes?
What do you mean?
Well, like, you know how humans are like Homo sapiens?
Sure.
At like a specific level, but then in some way, shape, or form, we are related to other creatures, either because we have similar ancestors like monkeys and gorillas, or we're both mammals.
Oh, I see. So
So you could say a horse is a mammal, a human is a mammal, but a human's not a horse, or vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. You could say it's the same thing where, a human is a mammal, but a mammal isn't necessarily a human.
So it's like those logic tests.
Yeah, like
those ridiculous sentences that they...
I mean, they're not ridiculous. I think like a square is a rectangle because it fits all the criteria of a rectangle, but and some rectangles fit the criteria of a square, obviously, but a lot of rectangles don't fit the criteria of a square. And I think it's the same thing where suffocation means no oxygen. Drowning is also no oxygen, but drowning also requires water. So drowning is the same as suffocating, but suffocating isn't necessarily the same as drowning. It could be, but it could also be something different.
I can buy into that. You've made some very good points.
So now with that in mind, water is snow, snow is water. Water is not necessarily snow. Is that right? I don't know.
Well, isn't it the same? This is like grade 11 science or grade 10 science where you talk about chemistry, and snow and water have the same, would it be chemical makeup?
Yeah, I guess. Like they have the same.
It's still H2O.
I believe so, yeah. with other stuff, but yeah, mostly.
It's just in a different state because the outside temperature has changed the water into snow
Yeah.
or the snow into ice.
Yeah.
Or if you evaporate water, then it becomes a gas. So I would, like, to me, water and snow are the same thing.
Mhm.
It's the same chemical, or maybe they refer to it as a molecular compound.
Yeah, that
Just
makes sense.
in a different state because of the temperature.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Yeah. Well, there
as you
go.
can tell, I'm not going to win any Nobel Prizes for, chemistry.
Right.
But so I would say snow and water are the same thing. So if you could drown in water, theoretically, and from a grammar standpoint and a semantical point of view, I don't even know if semantical is a word. From a semantic standpoint,
Sure.
you should be able to then drown in snow because it's water.
Yeah, I buy that. I guess like the thing is like you can definitely suffocate in snow, but would you call that drowning? I think if we're defining snow and water as the same thing, then I buy that. One follow-up question then, if you were in a room in which all of the oxygen was uh, vacuumed out and filled with completely water vapor, like water, H2O as a gas, steam, or whatever you want to call it, would you then call that drowning as well?
Would you even drown?
Well, actually, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know enough about chemistry to know if they
No,
would break apart into hydrogen and oxygen.
that's what I wasn't sure of because that was my first thought. I was like, well, if it breaks up, is the oxygen, I guess what I'm thinking of is because, again, I'm going to go out on a limb here and talk about things I maybe don't know anything about. But I think fish, for example, are able to live under the water because they can consume or extract the oxygen
Yes.
from water in its liquid state. We
Yes.
cannot do that.
Right.
But we clearly have the ability to use oxygen in a gas state.
Right.
So if you were in a room with nothing but water vapor, would you be able to use the oxygen because it's in a gas state? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't know either. Like, I think it would have to break up into H2 and O2. I think that would, and I don't know enough about chemistry to know that that would happen. I don't think we can breathe in water vapor and get oxygen from that. I don't think our lungs are capable of that. But again, I don't know. I'm not a physiologist either.
So, side note here, I like how you took a moment. You're like, I looked a few things up
Yeah.
prior to
Yeah.
coming into this. And then we're like, we're going to be able to avoid the situation of, well, here's this idea, but we're not 100% sure because we're hardly experts in, marine biology
Yeah.
or molecular chemistry. And now we've still found a way to get to this impasse of we don't necessarily know.
Yeah. We just went one level deeper than we normally do, I think.
Which is progress, I guess.
Yeah, it's progress. I mean, that's the thing is like you learn stuff and then you find another thing that you don't know, and that's your block now. You know, like it's like stairs. You learn something and you make some progress, and then there's another wall. So you got to learn something to get over the wall, make some progress.
And we took another step today, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like we did, maybe.
Yeah, I feel like we did. I feel like
Okay.
that was good. I liked it. I liked it. Um and hmm,
You swayed me on this one.
that's cool.
We were initially, I think we were on different sides of the
I
fence,
mean,
but
I
you
feel
brought forth some compelling arguments and points, which kind of pulled me over.
hmm.
You could almost say you got me to buy in
Oh,
to your
very good.
idea.
Very good. I think that's the thing is, I mean, I think we have the same ideas. I think we had the same idea. I think it's just we need to like if you explain clearly your point of view, then it's easier to see how the ideas line up. you know, which I think is important with athletes. An athlete buy-in is to make your point of view clear so that they can see how their ideas line up with your ideas.
I would completely agree with that. That the communication piece in buy-in is really important. And I think buy-in period is something you have to have in almost anything that you're doing, not just coaches and athletes. Yeah, an athlete needs to buy into what a coach is doing the same way a student needs to buy into what a teacher's doing, or an employee needs to buy into what a company is doing. It's really just what's the word I'm looking for? That's a buzzword. It's like a buzzword for trust, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
definitely.
It's about two parties, whatever they are, trusting one another on what they're going to do in terms of whatever actions moving forward. And in our case, it's building buy-in with the athletes that we work with and better being able to coach them because they trust in the process or the system or the training plan or whatever it is that we're providing from them. I don't know if you look at buy-in maybe the same way or a little
Yeah,
differently.
100%, 100%. Yeah, it's definitely, I like that you mentioned that about like the teachers and the company and stuff. Like a coach essentially is a teacher, essentially is a leader. Like it's all the same stuff. And I'm firmly in the camp that if whoever you're leading, whoever you're teaching, whoever you're coaching, if they don't like buy in, believe in your methods or your program or your lessons or your, whatever the company stands for, whatever, then they're certainly they're not going to put their best foot forward. They're not going to go into it with 100% effort. They're not they're not going to trust you. They're not going to believe that it's going to work. And for me personally, an athlete believing in the program, believing that they don't need to believe that it's the best thing for them, but they should believe that it's going to be helpful at least.
The right thing for them.
Yeah, like if they don't believe that it's at least a good thing for them to do, it's not going to work. It doesn't matter how perfect the program is. Like, first of all, it can't be perfect, but um, they need to believe in it for it to work. It doesn't matter how much science you have backing up your ideas.
Yeah, I don't know where I heard this quote. I forget who said it, but they said something along the lines of you're better off to get 100% buy-in on a 50% program than 50% buy-in on a 100% program. Because that 100% buy-in is going to give you way more intent, way more purpose, way more output and effort into what it is that they're doing. You're basically, you're not going to be wasting anything or leaving anything on the table, as where if somebody's not fully buying into what you're providing them, there's opportunity for things not to be as purposeful or intent driven as maybe you'd want them to be.
Yeah, well, even if you think about it like that, like a mathematical perspective, if you've got like if you talk about a 50% program, maybe that means half the things are good for you, half the things are like bad for you, maybe, um, and you've got 100% effort into all of those things. Like the bad attributes, I don't think will be as detrimental. Like they still make you more athletic, just maybe not in the direction you want it to be.
It's still exercise, it's still fitness, you're still moving the body,
Yeah,
presumably, right?
exactly. So there's still benefits to that, and it's being done really, really well. And then the 50% of things that are really, really good about the program, you're getting absolutely everything you can out of those exercises, versus a 100% program with 50% effort. If everything in the program is like the best it could possibly be for the person, again, first of all, that's you're never going to find that program. But with 50% effort, I would argue that even doing the right things, you're getting worse because you're creating bad habits, you know?
And you may not even be getting the change or the adaptation that you're looking for. Right? I mean, look at our respective sports. Someone doesn't show up to a track and field practice and run with 100% intent. Speed creates speed. There's no way to get fast by going slow. You have to go fast in order to get faster. And like, sure, there's things you can do that are slower that will help you get faster. But at the end of the day, you need to sprint fast to run fast. And strength work is the same way. Strength builds and promotes strength. It's really hard to go into the weight room and get really strong at lifting 100% 1RM loads if you're only ever lifting 60% load. Or you think, oh yeah, I'm giving a good effort. This is really heavy. Maybe it's only 80 or 85%. So you're leaving something on the table. And so I think especially with that heavy, fast, high neural demand stuff that we do in training, if you don't have the intent behind it, like, don't even waste your time. It's not worth it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. It's yeah, especially 100% with the speed created speed. Like you can't do your high intensity track workout half-assed because you are probably making yourself slower if you're doing that. And with the same kind of idea, like you need the intensity with the lifting. Like it's such a repetitive thing. Like powerlifting is such a repetitive thing that you need to be like your body's that's the thing, is your body's always adapting. Like it's never not adapting, right? So if you are doing a lot of bad reps, then your body is getting used to bad reps and will become more prone to using that bad rep strategy. And like everyone has compensation strategies that they use, because it makes the lift a little bit easier for them, which sometimes is okay, sometimes is not. You still want to gradually work towards a more efficient pattern. Maybe you're working on a specific bracing skill or something like that. If you're not giving your 100% effort, then you're not going to work towards that goal. You're going to default into the thing that you're used to doing, the thing that's easier. And then you're just further entrenching that bad habit or that compensation pattern, which like sometimes is fine, but sometimes it's just opposite. And I see that a lot, honestly, where like I'll bring something up, like this is something that we should try to work on, and then it gets better quickly over the next couple weeks, and then it's like, okay, this is, you've slacked off. I can see it. Like it's gotten worse, or I haven't seen any progress in this capacity for the last couple weeks, kind of thing.
So what are the ways that you build buy-in then with the athletes that you work with? You're talking about some of these examples of, we need to make some changes, or we need to do something, or you need to try to extract intent out of the athletes to do what it is they need to do in their training. What are the ways that you have found to be effective to build buy-in with the athletes and the clients that you work with?
I think, well, I mean, you nailed it off the bat, saying like buy-in equals trust, essentially. Um, so the same kinds of things you would use to build trust in any relationship, I think, apply to coaching. Um, Especially like if you have a long-standing relationship with an athlete, then it's a lot easier because you've got this track record of, I mean, if they've been with you for a long time, presumably it's success. So they're like, yeah, we've been through this much and it's all been good for the most part. So yeah, whatever you think is good, then let's do that. But especially starting with a new person, I feel like it helps to be a lot more upfront and explaining a lot more things about the ideas that I'm having, or like what's going into their program and why it's going into the program, and like what we're looking for to come out of this sort of thing. Whereas with like a long-standing athlete relationship, you can just kind of program it, and like, I know how you move. I know you're probably going to do this in a pretty good way, so you're going to get a good adaptation. You don't. It still helps, I think, to explain why things are in there. But if the trust is built, you don't need to as much. Versus with a new athlete, I think it helps build that trust faster if you can explain why you're thinking certain things or why you want them to be doing certain things. Because then they just get to see how you work, and if your explanations make sense to them, then whether or not they trust you, they can trust the idea, and then over time you can start to build the trust between yourselves.
Yeah, I think you made a good point there about, with buy-in being trust, and then ultimately, how do we develop trust between people and things like that. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is that the athletes and the clients and anyone else that we work with, they're people, right? They're not robots, they're not machines. And we always think about, progressing things in a certain way and making things easier or harder. And it's a very like mechanized way of thinking. Someone's going to go from here and go to there and go to there and go to there. As we're learning and figuring stuff out for people is often very random. It's not as linear or as direct as we think. And so it's really important to remember that they're people first. And going to kind of flash back a little bit to, what episode was it when we talked about the qualities of great coaches? Was that number 2?
Yeah, I think it was number 2 or 3.
Yeah, so way back. And so if people remember when we talked about what are the qualities we look for in great coaches, and for ourselves to try to be great coaches, what are the qualities we want to emulate? We talked about being a student of the game, and talked about the ability to communicate. At least on my end, those were 2 things. And one thing that I've found to be really effective with building buy-in with athletes is to show them, or have a way to illustrate to those athletes, your ability to communicate and your ability to show that you're a student of the game. Because I think those are 2 things that can really help build trust, right? If you show that you're a student of the game and you want to learn, it shows a level of humility where you're not this all-knowing expert, right? You can ask them questions and you can learn from them. And then the way that you learn from them gives you a new way to communicate with those athletes and use their language and things like that. Because I think as soon as you're able to ask them questions and learn from them, and then you're able to communicate in their language, they then, I say, they'll feel like they're being treated like a person, but you are treating them like a person. And you're able to have conversation with them. You're able to show that, sure, I have some knowledge and I can help you, but I'm not an expert. And, they get to be a part of the journey as well. So I think it ties in nicely with what we've talked about with the attributes of what we think are great coaches, because I think coaches that show an ability to continue to learn and want to learn, and then show really strong ability to communicate, really helps build buy-in, especially, in the long term with athletes.
Yeah. I like that you called that back, because I do think I remember in that episode, I had one other thing to add to those 2,
Yes.
which was included for you, but not included for me. And that's like the main other thing that I wrote down before this, was that like caring about the athlete is the other thing. For you, that's part of communication.
Mhm.
For me, I view it as something different.
But it's still there. It's still important.
It's still there, but yeah, absolutely. So I like that you mentioned that, because I think that building that trust with an athlete is just, I guess, letting them see that you have the things that we think great coaches are, you need to do those things to build trust. And I guess that just means that being a great coach is one that builds trust with their athletes. Yeah, so I like that you brought that up. And yeah, just treating them like people and being really open about like what your thought process is, or like isn't, in a certain point. Like it's like showing that you're not an expert necessarily. Like you have experience, which is why they're coming to you, but you don't know everything, and you're going to need to ask questions from them. You're going to need to go learn other things, and like some things are just outside your base of experience or knowledge, and that's fine. I think it's helpful sometimes to just be like, I'm excited to change things up next block because I'm sorry, I feel like this one just wasn't that good, and that's on me. Like I had some ideas, we tried some things out, they didn't work, and that's going to happen. But just being open about that you're a human, they're a human, and that you're trying to help them, they're trying to help you, and you just all have the same goal of this person succeeding in their sport. um, I think putting all of that on the table, and because I think it's really easy, maybe not as much in my situation, or even in your situation, compared to like the strength coach of a university football team or something like that, where I feel like in that situation, there's more of a power dynamic, like I'm in charge of you kind of thing, and you have to do what I say. But in my situation, at least, I try as much as I can to be equal with my athletes. Like I'm going to ask them questions because I need to learn about them if I'm going to make a good program for them. And I want to know what they like to do, or what they think works well for them, or what they think they need to be working on, or what they're feeling, or what cues they like to use, and things like that. It's all super, super valuable. Um, and I like their opinions. Like before, a lot of the times before I finalize the block and send it to them, I'll just be like, hey, take a look at it. What do you think? Do you think this is going to be feasible? Do you think this is going to work well? Are you excited about this kind of thing? Um, and I think that's all helpful. And most of the time they're like, yeah, I think that looks great. I think that looks like it's going to be really fun. And that's really all I need from them, is that if you're excited about it, then that's great. I think it's going to work really well. Um, but I just remember having conversations not about coaching, but about more like political, social issues in the world currently. And a discrepancy in power is something that gets in the way of trust a lot of the time. And people aren't going to, if you are the person in power and you want to help somebody, that feeling of I'm helping you, but you aren't offering anything to me, creates that power dynamic. And it makes this person or this group of people not want to open up, because it's like, now I'm beholden to you.
Mhm.
And so I think reducing that gap as much as you can is helpful, at least in my setting. Like in certain team cultures, I think it maybe helps build buy-in, because like similar to like a chain of command in a business or in the military or in policing or something like that, like you kind of trust because you have to, in a way. Which I think, I mean, there's positives and negatives about that, but yeah, anyway, tangent
No,
over.
you make a great point that you want to build the trust in a way that is, like you said, creating an equal playing field or an equal level between coach and athlete, and creating trust in a way where the athlete wants to trust you, not feeling obligated to trust you, like you said, because of a power dynamic of, well, I'm in charge, we're doing what I want, so this is what you have to do now for training. And I think one of the best examples I can think of recently of buy-in was an athlete I was working with last year. And this was a high school kid in our development program. And this individual, he didn't compete in track. He wasn't a track and field person. I knew or got to know him through another contact in the city that I knew that was well connected with the baseball community. And then those individuals reached out to me through that person because they knew that I was in the strength and conditioning and track and field world, because their son needed to get faster for baseball. And so we found a way to get him in on the dev program, and he was coming out to work with me in order to get faster. Kid, really talented kid, really good baseball player, probably one of the best baseball players in the country in his age group. But the thing that was holding him back was he didn't test well. And I think it's a 60-yard sprint they do, whatever the distance is between the base. And so despite the fact that like he was like a really solid kid, had great baseball skills, really fluid athlete, when you see him with the glove in his hand or the bat in his hand, it's like he moves well when he's playing baseball, but he wasn't super fast. And so that was going to potentially hold him back from getting a D1 offer or making, I don't know how the national team works for baseball at that age, but that was like the weak point that coaches were pointing out to him. So he was looking for somebody to help him get faster so that that way he could kind of put to bed the doubts that he wasn't fast enough to play at the next level. And so I started working with this individual, and it all went really, really well. And he tested really well in the end and got fast. And it was noticed not only in the test, but on the ball diamond as well. And he's moved off now to an academy to play ball there, which is great. So we kind of got him to where he wanted to go. But I think there was a lot of buy-in from him, and it came from the notion of, as a coach, can you show the athlete that you treat them like another human being? Can you show them you're a student of the game, and can you communicate well with them? So the advantage I had at the get-go was they were coming to me because presumably I had some sort of knowledge in speed and acceleration that they wanted. So I never had to try to prove to them that I knew enough to help them get from A to B. But one of the things that was going to be difficult was I don't know anything about baseball. I've never worked with baseball. I, never really watched a whole lot of games. Going to a Blue Jays game live is a lot of fun. Watching baseball on TV, not so much. So the challenge I was going to have was I not only need to prepare this kid to run well in a straight test, which I can prepare them for, but how am I going to make them faster on the diamond and make the coaches notice a difference when they're actually playing? And so I think I did a decent job communicating with them when I first started working with them, to basically kind of share the knowledge I had in acceleration and speed with him. But at the same time, I was trying to pick up on giving him, okay, here's some of the tools, here are some of the drills. Now tell me what you're feeling. What does this feel like? What does that feel like? Because I was starting to pick up on the language that he would use. And then I would start to work that language into the explanations of other drills that we were doing moving forward. And again, that helps to show that you've used the language of the athlete, you've listened to them, and you've not only listened, but you've remembered. And now you're integrating it to whatever. And then there was a level of humility because I was asking him from the get-go a lot of questions about baseball. Trying to figure out the game. Okay, when you're on first base, how are you moving from first base to second base? What are your baseball coaches telling you to do? What happens after you hit the ball and you go to start to run towards first base? How are you setting up and how are you running? Because I knew at some point, sure, I can set him up in a 3-point stance and have him run well in the test. But can he use that speed to get from hitting the ball to first base and being safe? Can he use it to maybe steal bases? And so I was willing to basically show him from the get-go, like, I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about baseball. I need your knowledge and your understanding of the game to help me then create drills later on where when we had the group of the track kids in blocks, I had him doing some other starts that were more specific to, the split stance that he'd be in coming out of after hitting the ball, or the open step that he would take to run off the base or off the bag. And yeah, so I mean, I had the advantage of, him just being a really great kid, a really great athlete, and being very easy to work with. But I feel like that's a story or an incident where I think maybe best gives an example of, as a coach, how you can be a student of the game and how you can communicate with the athlete using their language. And at the end of the day, then that person, I'm presuming he felt that way because we worked well as coach and athlete, and he got to where he wanted to go. But he knew that I cared about him as a person and his success, and that, my ego or the feeling of wanting to be this like all knowledgeable, all powerful coach had nothing to do with what he was trying to accomplish. And you know what? I ended up learning a lot from him as well with the sport of baseball. And I feel better prepared if I was to work with a baseball athlete in the future. So there was a mutual back and forth of, he now has some drills and some things that he can do to stay sharp and stay quick during the season, for example. And I now have some knowledge of being able to work with baseball athletes moving forward. So, I mean, that's maybe the best recent example I can think of I've had where, a buy-in strategy that I've tried to use has worked really effectively.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. That's a great story. And I think
Sorry
demonstrates
if that
all
was a
that.
little long.
No, that was good. That was good. I think it demonstrates all that really clearly, for sure. Where, and it's helpful, I think, to know where the athlete's coming from as well. You make a great point about like this kid's parents knew somebody who knew you, I think, and kind of went through that circle. And so he already had like an idea of you in his head. I think that happens to me a lot as well, where most of my athletes come to me through referrals, or maybe I'll meet them. I'll meet them beforehand because they're friends of people I coach, and I see them at competitions, or I go to lift with people at different gyms or whatever. Obviously, not anymore, but it has happened in the past. Um, and so there's always something that somebody's looking for, and if they get the impression that you have that thing, then they're going to be interested. That doesn't mean that they're going to stay or buy in, but they're interested anyway. And that's usually how it happens. Like the the biggest one, I think. Well, one smaller one that's happened more often recently is with my athletes. I've been developing somewhat of a reputation of being able to like help them through injuries, coming out like decent on the other side, or like preventing them, or like quick fix kind of stuff. Um, so some people are looking for that kind of thing if they've have more specific issues, with me specifically. But the biggest one that people come to me for, or I think switch coaches in general for, is if they don't feel important, or if they don't feel like they're being heard or listened to or taken care of, or if they're at a competition with their coach and their coach has like a few athletes there. They don't feel like a priority. Maybe they're like a lower level lifter comparatively. They don't feel like a priority. So that's been the biggest thing for people switching coaches. And yeah, people, or otherwise, like if someone's never had a coach before and their friend is being coached, then it's just kind of like, they just speak highly of you and say like that, you're getting good results, you seem really knowledgeable, you seem to really care. But that's, at the end of the day, that's the biggest one, I think. If people, it doesn't matter how much you know, um, if they don't think that you care about them, like that's going to be the biggest thing, because there's hundreds of people, thousands of people that know more than I know, not even the same, more than I know. Um, but this person believes that I care about them because I do care about them and I care about their success. And I want to listen to what they like to be doing in the gym, what they don't like to be doing in the gym, how they like to go about things, what they feel works for them, what they feel doesn't work, what they feel will help or hurt, or what, like hurts in the moment, what I'm not capable of doing. Like all those sorts of things are really, really important. But even, and everyone has boundaries, I think, and it's easier for me in my situation to do this. But um, like I try to be as open with as I can with my athletes outside of training as well. And um, for me, that's mostly just like, hey, had a really busy weekend, or hey, some family stuff came up. Like, is it okay if I, instead of doing your update now when I would normally do it, it'll just be pushed a couple of hours? Or like, is that fine for you? If it's not fine, I can do it right now. That's cool. But just kind of being open with that kind of stuff, and being really clear that if things come up on their end, I'm willing to be flexible. Um, whether it's like adjusting the program to work around an injury, of course, or to work around like sudden plans that pop up on the weekend, or other medical things come up, or emotional things like different relationship things come up. um, Being flexible, and then even further than that, like if people need to talk, like I'm here for them. Like I want to be a good coach. Like that's why you're coming to me. I want to be your coach for sure. But I feel like I have the best relationships with, and then the best progress, generally speaking, comes from athletes that I'm also friends with, like genuine friends with. Um, so yeah, for me, that's the biggest thing I try to do. And it's easier with some people, it's harder with other people. I think a lot of people aren't looking for that kind of relationship with their coach, and that's fine. Um, but yeah, I think that's really helpful as well.
Yeah, you just show people that ultimately that you care
Mhm.
about whatever it is. Like you said, primarily it's probably helping them achieve whatever goals or make whatever progress in the sport. But then inevitably, if you work with somebody long enough, things are going to get in the way. Where, like you said, it could be, oh, I'm moving, or I have school, or I have whatever. There's something that might get in the way, and you show some flexibility or accommodation for those other events in life, and it helps display to the athlete that they that you care about them, and that you're willing to work around or work with whatever the circumstances are. And again, it goes back to that power dynamic of like, oh, you have to do A, B, or C. We're not flexible on this. You have to do it. I don't care if this other stuff has come up. This is what we need to get done. And I think in any, you know, coach athlete scenario where there's a lot of buy-in that's built, there is a lot of there's variability, there's flexibility in terms of what's happening. Like this individual that I was working with, there was, hey, I got invited to this baseball camp this week, so I'm not going to come in and train. Well, 100% you should go to that baseball camp and get scouted by people and create opportunities for yourself. And then we'll get back to training the following week, and we'll just make some changes to what we're doing. Or, oh, I traveled here or there and now I'm tired. Okay, take today off. Let's come back on this other day and take care of it. So again, what you've talked about there is a perfect example of treating people like they're humans. And they're not machines. They're not these robots that we're just programming to do certain things. That we're working with a live human being that has feelings and emotions and is going to have physical, mental, cognitive, emotional ups and downs and that the training has to be adaptable to it, and your approach as a coach has to be adaptable to it. So those are all really great points, I think.
Yeah. And I think you need to be conscious of what their goals for their training are and what your goals for their training are, and what you consider to be important in training. And like I tell my athletes like whenever things come up, but semi frequently, like the most important thing for me is that they enjoy their training and that they have fun when they're in the gym. And I think sometimes that means changing what the training is. Like some people just hate certain exercises, so we try to avoid those as much as possible. Or some people want to, like, they just don't like doing a lot of volume, or they would like to go heavier more often because that's a little bit more fun. So things like that you keep in mind. Or things like sometimes people will get the opportunity to go do some strongman stuff because they have friends that are into strongman, and they just say like, hey, come out on Saturday and do some Atlas stone stuff or whatever. And obviously that's not optimal for powerlifting training, not detrimental necessarily, but that's not what I programmed for you on Saturday. But of course, go and do that. That's going to be fun. That's what you want to do. I don't want you to not do it. Powerlifting at the end of the day is a hobby. You're not going to make any money. It's not your job. Like, it's, of course we're going to work around that to make that happen as best as it can be. And I mean, like, we'll adjust, of course, like we'll do things a little bit differently on Thursday and Friday and on the Monday probably to work around that. But just because it's the most optimal thing for progress doesn't mean it's what you should be doing. It's whatever's the most fun in this context anyway. Actually, in any context, I think whatever's the most fun is the thing you should be doing. But that kind of thing's a little bit different for for this kid who's playing baseball, like that could be a career. So that's something to keep in mind. I have another client that I train in person more often that like, she has aesthetic goals, but mostly she just likes to be in the gym. She likes to move. She wants to feel like she's active and doing stuff. And me being there helps her be accountable, makes it more fun for her to be there. Like, she wouldn't have as much fun doing it by herself. She wouldn't be as confident doing it by herself. And then it's just nice to talk to somebody, honestly. Like, some personal training sessions end up being more like therapy sessions than anything else, and that's fine. That's fine. Like, I don't have a problem with that. I think some people might, but it's whatever the athlete's looking from for you, whatever the athlete's looking for from you.
Correct. There you go.
Yeah. Then that's what is the most important thing. It's not what you think they need. It's whatever they're looking for. And if that's something you can provide, that's great. And if it's not, then that's fine too.
Well, and to me, that ties back into, again, that's why I think there's a lot of parallels between what we're talking about today and that episode where we talked about what makes great coaches. Because even the examples you gave there's the communication aspect of, here's what I'm looking for, here's what you're looking for, but then also a little bit of that student of the game, because maybe you encounter a scenario where, like, oh, I've never dealt with this before, or this person likes this type of exercise. And then you can show them that, not show them all the stuff that you did, but you show them through the programming or through the conversations that you have, that you've then gone and explored that thing. You weren't just trying to rest on whatever knowledge and tools you had in the toolbox previously. You're going like, no, I'm taking the time and the effort for you to go learn something else, look into these other avenues, and then bring it into what we're doing. So again, those are like really great points. And yeah, like, if building that buy-in is just, it's the trust piece. And I think the more that you show people you're willing to put the effort in, the more you communicate with them, you talk to them about their training, about them, about their sport, you take an interest in what they're doing. And, you do those types of things and you can really build strong buy-in with the athletes and the clients and stuff that you're working with. So, there's a lot of, I guess, is it interpersonal skills or interpersonal skills? Because it's between two people. The interpersonal skills that you have, in those regards are really important. And for anyone listening, there's a really good book out there by Brett Bartholomew called Conscious Coaching.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I haven't read it. I've heard of it.
Really, really good book, and kind of dives into, like we've talked today, a little bit more about the lived experience of, this is what's worked, this is what hasn't worked. And they talk about that stuff in the book, but there's also some pretty solid research and science from psychology and sociology in terms of how does the brain work, how does interactions between different people sort of unfold, and does a really good job of kind of taking some of the things from a science or a research perspective on the human brain and how we interact with people, and some strategies you can use to build buy-in. So a bit of an older book now. I think it came out in 2015. But I have a copy of it. It was a gift to me from Coach Jay, who I think probably talked about in that episode, because we talked about some mentors and things like that, who gave that book to me, and I read it, and it was a really good book. And so if anyone's looking for maybe a read or a place to go to find some information on building buy-in, that's a good place to go. I don't know if there's any books or anything that you've read that maybe.
No, not really. But that's a good point as well. That there's definitely resources out there that can help anybody. Like I know a friend of mine just finished his PhD recently, I think, in I don't know if it was like workplace psychology or leadership psychology, something like that, but that's definitely a whole area of research that would certainly apply.
Yeah, they touch on that in the book.
Yeah.
Like the leadership psychology or things like that.
Yeah. So that's a great point. And I also like the point you made earlier about the like being a student of the game doesn't need to be learning about the sport or learning about training. It can be learning about the athlete specifically that you're working with. Like, it's every time you ask a question to an athlete, like, you're learning maybe not about powerlifting or about sprinting or about baseball or training, but you're learning about them, and that's always valuable. So yeah, that's a great point there as well. So,
what's a question I like to ask a lot of the athletes I work with to get to know them better? You probably know where this is going.
I do. It's great though.
I like to ask them what sort of music they like to listen to.
Right.
I also will ask them if they like race car driving. You never know. You never know.
Yeah. I like how one of them's open-ended and the other one's just a yes or no.
Yeah. Do you like race car driving? And if the answer is no, then I don't end up working with that athlete. It never seems to work out for some reason. I don't know why. But
yeah. Do you like race car driving? No. Okay. Well, do you like heavy metal music? No. All right. So what else is there?
Well, that thing over there, it's a door.
Yeah. Nice.
You can use it to exit.
Very good.
Go find another coach to work with. No, I'm kidding. I've never done that. But I do often ask the athletes. I like to know what music they listen to. And also, like I said, debacle is, what do you play in the weight room for people? So it's helpful to know what type of music people listen to, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the coach and you're in control of what's getting played in a team session, then it's helpful. It's helpful to know what motivates people and that kind of thing. What was motivating you this week? I guess were you listening to a lot of Christmas stuff this week, or not really?
I obviously went through the Trans-Siberian Orchestra albums a number of times, as we alluded to on the the Christmas holiday special or whatever we ended up calling it. So yeah, obviously was listening to a lot of that for Christmas, but this week, one of the bands I'd forgotten about, or not forgotten about, but hadn't listened to in a long time, was Venom.
I haven't heard of them.
That's why I paused. I was like, maybe, no,
No.
okay, all right. They're technically classified as new wave British heavy metal,
That's cool.
which I think describes it perfectly because their stuff is from the early 80s. I think their first album is 81. So sort of in like a weird time for metal music. It was like exploding in the sense that before there was metal music and there was not metal music. And then they sort of changed the way metal sounded and influenced bands to take a lot of different directions, and I think helped create a lot of subgenres in the music world of metal music. So yeah, they're kind of thrashy, they're kind of heavy, they're kind of punky. They mix in some darker themes and imagery, and they're just like, I like them a lot, but they're really good to listen to if you like metal, but they're also, I think, like historically a really important piece of the puzzle in terms of forging and creating new paths for metal bands in the future to play around with the sound and do things differently. And then inevitably that led me to listen to some other bands from the same time that's sort of that new wave British heavy metal. But Venom is definitely the spearhead of that operation. So
Nice.
yeah, I was listening to a lot of Venom this week, throwing it old school.
Nice. That's pretty cool. It is cool to think about how like music changes and evolves and grows and that sort of thing. And it's a weird thing to think about, but like I don't know if you ever felt this, but it's annoying to listen to the music that your parents like. Sometimes it's not. But I felt that when I was younger that I didn't really like any of the music that my dad likes. Less so now. I can appreciate it more now. But it's weird to think about in the future that I might put on music in the car and my kid's going to be like, Dad, I hate that. Like, well, what do you like to listen to? Like, what's music in the future going to be like? What's an 11-year-old kid going to listen to in 20 years? Like, it's just weird. It's just weird to think about that, but it's interesting at the same time.
I think the evolution of music is cool in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, and new genres get created. And I mean, like when Venom first came out, for example, they were labeled, I don't know by who, but they were labeled as like a black metal band because of their like satanic imagery and elements that they worked into the music. But now they've retroactively gone back and been labeled as new wave of British heavy metal. Because if you listen to black metal today, it sounds nothing like what it was. So they basically kind of, who they are, I don't know. But the tags or the genres have evolved and have changed a lot in the same way that, if you listen to hip hop music that comes out today, it doesn't sound at all like what was being produced in the late 80s and the early 90s by, the pioneers of that genre. It's evolved so much that now you would almost retroactively go back and label them as this type of hip hop or this type of rap. And metal's done a little bit of the same way that, there was forms of metal now or genres that never existed back then. So then you retroactively go back and label. So it's like anything. It evolves and changes over time. And it's really cool to kind of look at the history of how it shapes and evolves.
Mhm. Yeah, that is cool. That is really cool. I did check out the Trans Siberian Orchestra a little bit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we were just playing games like Christmas Eve, and my brother put on a playlist on Spotify, and I don't know if it was maybe like just not the right playlist or the wrong selection or whatever, but it all seemed like only listened to a few songs, but they all felt like pretty soft. And they like I never heard the orchestra. Like it was singing and a guitar, which like is fine, but I was looking for more of the orchestra, you know.
Yeah, there's I'll directly send you some tunes then.
Okay, that's perfect. That's perfect.
Spotify tried. Hopefully I
Yeah.
can do a better job.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. So yeah, a little bit of that. I did try my very hardest to listen to other kinds of K-pop that are not BTS.
I thought it might be something other than K-pop, but it was other forms of K-pop, other subgenres of K-pop.
Yeah, I guess I don't. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like each group kind of has their vibe. Like what, like this is the kind of thing that they do. So there's another group called Twice, which is more like sweet, like innocent pop kind of stuff, like more up like what like an early Taylor Swift would be like. Not that sound, but that kind of emotional vibe, I guess. And Chung Ha was an individual artist that I don't know what the vibe is, but she would be my favorite after BTS, I think. So if people are interested, then check those ones out. And then lately, I've also been really into one of the rappers who is a member of BTS. His name is Suga, like when he's with them, but his solo name is August D, and he raps hard, and it's really cool. It's really cool. And I've also been more interested in like having the closed captioning on their videos, so I actually know the lyrics, like or what the song's generally about anyway, which is cool too.
You're probably
So,
learning a new language. You're going to be fluent pretty soon.
I will not be. Bronwyn's actually doing Korean on whatever one of those learn a language apps is. I can't remember what it's called.
I know. Yeah, I know what you're referring to, though.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, she is doing that. So it's really tricky, apparently. Like a lot of the characters, like there's even just learning the alphabet is a task and a half. So
I believe it.
Yeah. But anyway, that was the music journey.
Well, I'm glad you
So,
gave the audience something different than the
yeah,
same band.
I'm
So that was
sorry.
good.
I'm sorry, audience. Like I'm in a well here. Like I don't see any light. Doesn't feel like a tunnel. It feels like it's just a pit that I'm just going deeper and deeper into.
I'll get you a rope and I'll throw it down and we'll pull you a little closer to the surface.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, good stuff. That was a fun talk about buying.
That was good. I had fun.
Yeah.
As I always do, though.
Of course. But yeah, deeper into a lot of the stuff that we talked about in that coaching qualities episode for sure, which was a cool callback. But yeah, if anybody has any thoughts about what we should talk about or questions or whatever, then hit us up on Instagram. Speed Strength Performance, Speed Strength Show, Speed. No, I'm not Speed. I'm Braden Southern.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the Speed Strength Show. I'm Braden. Thanks for coming along, world.
All right. We will see you next week.
Peace.